Welcome to Advocating for Dads with Jana Jones.
Hello and welcome to Advocating for Dads with experienced family law attorney Jana K. Jones. Jana has been providing father-focused legal service since 2009 and is passionate about fair custody arrangements in North Carolina. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is Relocation and Custody, What Happens When Mom Wants to Move with the Kids. Jana, so good to see you again.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you too.
All right, so this is a good topic because I think we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but I'm excited to get into this a little bit more. So how do courts in North Carolina typically handle situations where one parent wants to move with the kids?
So there is no typical way it gets handled. I would say the default would be North Carolina is the home state of the child or children. And so you're going to have to demonstrate that it's going to be in the children's best interest to remove them from the state. That's probably a general place that judges start, but everybody's facts and circumstances are different. And so you could have a similar facts and a different outcome at trial.
Is there, obviously, I'm assuming there's some sort of consideration taken for the distance that the move is going to be. Is there a general cutoff, or is it just, again, case specific?
So the important thing to note when it comes to relocation is that the courts are never going to dictate where a parent can live. You're an adult, you can move anywhere you want. The question is, where can you take these kids, right? Especially when it comes to relation to the other parent and affecting their schedule for custody or visitation. So if you're in a scenario where you're moving, say, to South Carolina, upstate South Carolina, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're right on the border. There are some, towns in South Carolina that are closer to us than North Carolina towns. So that is not going to be necessarily seen as a big issue, especially if you have a situation where maybe mom has primary custody and dad has every other weekend. He could still do that, right? Maybe there's a little bit of time tacked on to that exchange as far as transportation is concerned, but for the most part, he's able to continue to utilize his every other weekend. Conversely, if mom wants to move to Los Angeles, that is going to have a major effect on dad's ability to do his every other weekend visitation. And specifically, if there's a joint custody arrangement, now we're going to have to move from joint to someone having primary because we're living on different coasts. So all of that, the facts and circumstances where you're moving, how far away you're moving, and what the custody arrangement was before the move play a role in what ends up happening ultimately with the modification.
Are there certain things that are acceptable reasons for the move and certain things that aren't acceptable reasons in the court's eyes?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's case specific. I would say generally some acceptable reasons to be moving are, your job moved you, you're in the military and you have to move, you're getting married to someone and they live in another state and you have to move to be with your new spouse. Those would be big, ticket items that are generally going to be understood as to why you're moving. If you're moving to California to just find yourself, you want to change of scenery. Don't we all? But that's not going to necessarily be enough there for the court to say, we're going to uproot this child and move them out there for you to find yourself. That's going to be a little harder to pull off.
Even if there is a really good reason, like a job or maybe military is different, but in the situation like if someone, like in your example of someone wanting to move to a different coast, and they have a good reason based on their job and maybe income's better, all that stuff, and maybe dad has every other weekend. Can dad say, no, I'm not okay with that? Does he have the power to say you can't, I don't allow this to happen?
So when you decide to get the courts involved in your custody dispute and an order comes from it, the order dictates what's going to happen. So it's not dad saying, no, you can't go. It's whether the court is saying, yes, you can take the children with you to this new coast or this new state. The goal would be to get a new order that is going to reflect the reality of the parties now. If somebody's moving, they're moving. And if you have an every other weekend scenario, you can no longer practically see the kids every other weekend if they're on the West Coast. That's just not going to really be reasonable unless money is truly not an issue and you're going to be flying these kids back and forth. But for most folks, that is going to be, cost prohibitive. And so we're going to be having to modify the schedule in some kind of way where one parent has primary and the other person has maybe an extended visitation. So maybe the parent with primary has the child or children during the school year, and the visitation parent has the child or children the entire summer or the majority of the summer. That's not ideal, right? Because I'm sure the custodial parent would like some time in the summer to vacation.
Absolutely, yeah. And who wants to go 7, 8 months without seeing their kids?
Exactly. So it's not really ideal for anybody. But again, when the court is trying to deal with best interest, they're weighing, how do I get this child or children to get as much time with both parents as possible based on this new relocation arrangement that's going to be going on.
So if the father really thinks that the proposed relocation is not in the best interest of the children or child, what steps what options they have? What are the steps they should follow?
So let's say they've already got a custody order that's given dad every other weekend, and mom says, I'm moving to, I use California a lot because it's a big state out west, right?
It's far. It's very far from you.
Very far. I'm definitely from the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And mom says, I'm moving to California because I'm getting married to someone out there, or at my job, just move me out there, et cetera, right? What dad needs to do is file for a modification as soon as possible. Because if mom gets out there to California, gets the child settled, gets the child in school, we get a new normal for that child going, you've got a harder time convincing the court that it's going to be now in this child's best interest again, because that's what the court's determining,
right,
to relocate them yet again back to the state of North Carolina under a new custody arrangement where now dad has primary custody and mom has some kind of visitation. So the sooner the better. If you catch wind that your ex is trying to move and wherever they're moving is going to make the custody arrangement an order that you have impractical, you need to get to court as quickly as possible.
That seems like a tough balance for the court to maintain when thinking about the custodial parents' desire to relocate and the non-custodial parents' desire to be able to see their kids regularly. I mean, how do they just have to always default back to what is best for the child, I suppose, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if it's a situation where, let's say it's an every other weekend scenario, like we've talked about previously, dad has every other weekend visitation, mom is going to be moving to California with the kids, or that's what she wants to do. And let's say, for all intents and purposes, maybe dad has been flaking. Maybe he hasn't actually exercised his every other weekend schedule for various reasons. And now it's like, well, from the court's perspective, they're like, he wasn't really exercising that much time to begin with. How is this going to, harm the children in any way? Because it's not necessarily losing out on anything. So it's just, there's so many things that the court is going to be considering when they're thinking about relocation. Their goal is to always make sure that the child or children can maintain a relationship with both parents. So, there may be creative ways to do it depending on the facts and circumstances of the parties, the finances of the parties. So yeah, I think it's important to have a couple of ideas of ways that you can creatively get more time with the kids. So if your worst case scenario and mommy is going to end up being able to take the children cross country and your every other weekend scenario isn't going to work, obviously you're going to try to make up that time during the summer because that's not going to affect the children's school schedule. But maybe you can meet somewhere in the middle. Maybe you can take a vacation. Maybe spring break can be every year, someplace in between, and you get the kids for that time. And so you build a vacation in with also getting additional time with the children. Maybe the school schedule that they'll be following in this new jurisdiction is not a standard, 9-month situation where they're in school. Maybe they're year-round school. So maybe there is more flexibility for getting additional time with the kids during the traditional school year. So you just want to see what the facts and circumstances are going to be and try to be as creative as possible and give the court plenty of ways to try to get you more time if the court is inclined to let the kids go, and relocate with mom.
So let's stick with the scenario of mom moving to California. Let's say dad's doing his every other weekend. The kids are loving it. They're having fun. Everybody's doing great. But mom has a good reason for moving, job, whatever. What kind of situations will the court say it is in the best interest of the child for the move to go forward?
So if the court feels like there's a justified reason for moving, then they will assume that if it is going to still be in the child or children's best interest to stay in mom's care, that move then becomes the child's best interest as well.
Okay.
Again, there's not a perfect formula for this thing. If the court feels like it's going to be in the child or children's best interest to stay in the primary care of mom, then wherever mom goes is where the court's going to allow the children to move.
Okay. Because I think in some situations, maybe other states, perhaps, I think that you really have to have a really strong reason to move, or else they're really not, the court really won't let you do it. But it sounds like in North Carolina, if mom, in our scenario, of course, if mom is the one really dealing with the majority of the kids' day-to-day lives, then if they need to move to better their own life or to keep their job or whatever, then the court will will ultimately probably let them go.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of the court and the role of the court is not to, penalize somebody because they
Sure.
want to move, right? Best interest of the child is the polar star. So if mom is moving to California to get a job and that job's going to pay her more money and provide an even better lifestyle for the children that she's already providing, then that's only a good thing for the kids, and that's going to continue to be in their best interest. And so it's likely that the court may allow mom to take the children with her in that scenario. But conversely, if she's out there or she's going to move out there, she has no plans, she doesn't know where she's going to stay, she has no idea what the schools are going to be like or who the doctors are going to be, that's going to be a different scenario.
Right.
A lot of times people forget about, the family unit and, your supports and stuff, your village, as we say. So let's say mom's moving to California and maybe she doesn't necessarily have a job, but all her family is out there. And so now she's got family support. She's got grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc., that can help watch these kids, that can spend time with these children. And, maybe they haven't been able to because they were on the East Coast previously. Those could be very beneficial for the children. And so the court may take that into consideration when they're considering best interest of the child. So it's not just as simple as why exactly is the parent moving. It's also where are they moving to? What is life going to be like for these children in this new location? And is all of that combined going to end up being in the child or children's best interest?
Other than your scenario where mom didn't have a plan, didn't know what the schools or the house, or just wanted to go find herself, other than situations like that, if there is a valid reason for the move and she seems prepared, in what situations have you seen the move get denied?
Probably the most common reason it gets denied, honestly, is the child doesn't want to go.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah.
Children build relationships where they are, right? And so if we're talking about a child who's born and raised here and now you're going to uproot them and that's not something they're looking forward to and they are old enough to articulate that, the court's going to take that into serious consideration. So that's probably the most common reason I see that it just completely fails, is because the child is just absolutely not willing to do it and is going to end up creating a situation where you've got potential contempts going on simply because the child just refuses to cooperate with this new schedule or the relocation.
So the child's desires do weigh pretty heavily on this?
In that scenario that you just mentioned, I think that they would, yes, because we're talking about uprooting them. And this is, again, assuming that they are old enough for the court to feel like they're in the position to articulate their feelings, right? So this isn't a 6-year-old. This is maybe a 13, 14, 15-year-old. Maybe they have extracurriculars that they're involved in. Maybe they want to play Division I basketball and they're on a great team here in Charlotte. There could be any number of reasons why the child may say, I don't want to go. I want to stay here and I'm willing to go live with my other parent full-time or primarily in order to maintain where I am. And if it's that strong of a conviction that the child has, the court would absolutely take that into consideration. Now, that's not to say that that's exactly what the court's going to do.
Sure.
Because they've got to consider everything when they're determining best interest. But that will play a role, absolutely.
Yeah, we've all seen movies where divorces happen and the kid's all miserable at the new place because moved out somewhere else. So that's obviously something, I know they're just movies, but I know that's something obviously that the courts would want to avoid. They don't want to put the child in a situation where they're miserable or leaving behind everything that makes them happy or something like that.
Exactly.
So if somebody has primary custody and wants to move, what is the first step that they need to take? And then on the other side, if somebody has non-primary custody and wants and their spouse wants to move or ex-spouse wants to move, what is the process for those two?
It's exactly the same. If they do not have a custody order, then you need to file, okay? Because when you're going to be that far apart, you need something that's clear telling you who gets the children and when.
And when, yeah.
Yeah, so they both need to file. If they already have an order and that order can no longer, or it's basically useless based on where one of the parties is going to be relocating to, then you need to be filing for a modification, because that's definitely going to meet a substantial change in circumstances requirement, which is what you have to meet initially as a threshold before the court can determine best interest. If somebody's moving cross country, that's definitely going to be a substantial change in circumstances.
No doubt. Well, thank you for joining us on Advocating for Dads with experienced family law attorney Jana K. Jones. To connect with Jana, head to lawofficeofjkj.com and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Jana, as always, thanks so much for all the information. Really, really insightful. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos like this one.